Welcome to Conversations with Cheryl Weston. And I'm really excited about today's show. Um, but then I always am excited about my show because I have such terrific guests. I enjoy it very much so. So we're going to have several guests on today, and we want to talk about local elections. And so I know that we've got a lot of talk to talk about, so I don't want to take up my time or my guest time talking about it. Let's just bring them in. And our first guest is Jackeen Fox. And hey, Jackeen, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I said I'm going to start saying when people ask me that, walking on sunshine,
Oh,
as
wow.
Auntie M says. That's where I got it from.
Okay, well, that's a good place to be walking on sunshine. I don't know if I'm
Walking
quite there
on
yet.
sunshine.
I don't know if I'm quite there yet. Maybe I'm walking on a cloud.
God.
But yeah, there's a little bit of space I need to go up. I see.
Well, we've got Jackeen, and as I said before, we want to talk about today are the local elections and the importance. And I actually have been talking about this for some time, and we just had the elections. And so we're going to talk about a Facebook posting that Jackeen wrote, and I wanted to go over that. But in order to get us started, I wanted to bring in our Democratic political historian because I feel like that's who she is. So without any further ado, hey there, now we got Miss Precious McKesson. And as I introduced you, Precious, I said, we've got our Democratic political historian. And
Oh,
she is,
thank you, Miss
folks.
Cheryl.
Um, there's when you want to go to political information, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, it doesn't make any difference. If you want the facts, you got to go to Miss Precious. So
Right.
No,
with
that's you.
that,
Right.
That's we come to you. You the historian. We sit on the we stand on the shoulders of you, Miss Cheryl. I mean, I know you called me the other day and I hadn't returned your call yet. I've been so busy, but I did.
oh,
It's
I know
no,
that.
but
I
it no,
know
but I
that.
have a note. I said you need to call Miss Cheryl back. It was sitting on my sticky
Oh,
note.
that's like,
Uh,
I know you're busy because when I call, I always put a message in there like, "Hey, it's not an if it's an emergency, I'd say call me right now, girl."
well, if
But if
if you
not,
in text mode, I will tell you who was good for texting me is Auntie Brenda. She will hit me with a text message real quick because she know I'll respond real quick. That's what got me geared up this morning. She sent me a text message about some numbers, and I said, "Let me go look, Miss Brenda. I ain't looked at these numbers yet. Really dived in." And then
uh-huh,
as I called Jakeem, I was like,
Yeah.
"Look at some numbers."
And
yeah,
we had already had to plan to have this conversation, me and Cheryl, but I knew that the information that you were sharing with me this morning was so
uh-huh,
necessary for everybody to really engage with. Because I think
mhm,
people are just so curious about the nuance. And I
uh-huh,
think demystifying some of the information around how certain outcomes come is what helps people engage in the political process. So I think I'm so glad that you are available to come help us
yeah,
share that information. And I think
Yeah.
once we really get into it, people will
uh-huh,
start to see their place in politics. Because I feel like that's just been the toughest part, the barrier. People don't see their
yeah,
place. And once we start to demystify some of
mhm.
these numbers, some of these outcomes, people can start to see how they fit in.
Yeah,
I
it's
agree.
very critical, very, very critical. But I'll let you start, Miss Cheryl. Let me know when we all ready to jump in.
Well, like I said, I wanted to get and once Jakeem told me, oh, if you don't, I'm like, are you kidding? Bring that woman on because she's got it. One of the things I started I've been doing it for I don't know how long, for years, encouraging people, try to get them, I'd say as far as back as 2005, to understand the importance of our local elections and that we need to be in the primary because you'll hear people say, "Oh well, I'll wait till the jet." You folks, you
Mm-mm.
that it don't work that way, and it seems like we still can't get it done. And that's, as I said, I started that back in 2005, and John Chapman of WOWT was so nice. He did an interview with me And that was on January 24th of 2025, saying, hey, come on. He said, I liked it. I'm like, come on. We went to the election office to say, this is important. Our local is so much. I know people were all worked up over and we were so like, whatever, because there's terms I won't say here. But anyway, we were all there. And so we did this January 24th. I remember it quite well. And so now afterwards, as I was talking to Jakeem, and we all know I was in the election and all that, but the part I was still trying to get to people to understand, and Precious, you can give us some numbers on, hopefully. I would like you to just say, okay, the process is you're registered, you go to vote. You get a listing of who's going to be in there. Because one of the things I heard so many people, and I got a call, oh, I'm so happy I got the ballot and I get to vote for you. I didn't even know I was in that precinct, that ward. How does that work? How many, North Omaha, Adam Sassler just came out with some numbers, and we're like 36, I think, thousand registered voters in District 2.
Yes. Yes.
So how does this work when you say district and ward and precinct? Can you kind of
So
take us from the beginning, and maybe that will help people to understand?
I think when we break it down, like number one, this district has grown.
Oh
One
yeah.
thing, it's grown voter wise because when I pulled up numbers today, I went back to 2001.
Hmm.
We had in District 2 alone, we had 27,000
Right.
voters.
Hmm.
So to now where we're now, which is crazy, we've only grown by what, 10,000 voters?
Hmm.
20 something years. That's alarming to me. But
Yes.
then we also look at the redistricting piece because every 10 years we redistrict.
Right.
When I looked at the precincts wise, um, in 2001 we had 43 precincts voting, that meant across the district,
Hmm.
43 places that people could vote in their community, compared to now we only have 24 precincts in District 2. So you're seeing the numbers really reflect. And back in 2001, we only had a 20% turnout in the primary
Hmm.
election. So looking at this, it's like sometimes people don't understand the wards, precincts. So when we look at district, when we say congressional districts, that's normally cut out into the congressional districts based off of the census that come through, and that's how you know who was in your congressional. But when you start to look at your precincts and your wards are based off of how many, to me, when I look at it's based off of how many council people are in that ward.
Hmm.
But then some of those overlap with the county commissioner, some overlap
Right.
with school board, so some might be different. And so it's really like you just have to really just go to the site and say, who are my representatives?
Hmm.
That's how you know, because for so long, for a long time, I had Ben Gray as
Hmm.
my city council person, and then when they redistrict back in maybe, I
2000,
said
it was
again,
his last deal.
yeah, I ended up getting with Pete.
2004. Hmm.
Yeah, at Pete Festerson. So it was kind of like, wow,
Hmm.
it's really changed a lot. And so I just think that just educating people on where they live at, because so many people are so say, I live in District 2. Yeah, you live in District 2, but you still have a different local levels of government of how they dictate the numbers and
Hmm.
the maps and everything. So I just think we have to do a better job at that, because some people do. I mean, my mom, she called me. She's like, "Well, so and so ain't on my ballot." Well, because you don't live in that district, and you would think living in the house, in the same house as me, you would know that.
Yeah.
But it's apparent, it's not just our parents. Everybody has to. It don't matter how close they are to it. We just got to be able to communicate this and talk about it more, because District 2 is not just 24th Street. We always say no. It's a
Thank you. I keep trying to get people to
wider part of it.
understand is there was a our boundaries for North Omaha are very large because
Yeah.
actually I think the last time I looked, District 2, um, af before was the largest
Mhm.
district. And then when we had the redistricting, I believe it's District 3, Danny Bagley's
Yep.
district, that took over that spot. I think you wanted to jump in there to say something,
Well,
Jackie.
I wanted to ask a question because I
Hmm.
think like I want to ask Precious, does she think with the redistricting that these are symptoms of, my mind automatically goes to voter suppression when I think
Mhm.
about those kind of changes when it comes to district lines and boundaries and the shrinking of our precincts. Because you think about the intersectional issues, like we know transportation is hard for our
Hmm.
community sometimes. So if we have less precincts, that's less places, and it's harder for people to get to.
Right.
But I also wonder how much of it is kind of the normal political happenings. You know what I mean? So I wonder if there's an opinion on that, because I think sometimes our minds can go negative, but that's also because we experience a lot of negative, external outcomes.
Right.
So I
Right.
wonder your thoughts on
So
that before my mind goes too crazy with it.
on why the precincts have went lowered?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the political climate. I just give this as a prime example. The Malcolm X Foundation, or I think they were not a precinct this past election because of due to some construction maybe. And I remember trying to call around to find an area
Hmm.
within that area. And so I reached out to a few nonprofits in that area, and they were like, no, we don't want to be political. We don't want to, they don't want to
Hmm.
do that. And so I think that it comes down to that. Also, it comes with, sometimes, I mean, I would love for us to be a state where schools are not in session on election day, because then we have more facilities
Hmm.
to be able to use, because now we're putting, you have the public coming into schools that are normally locked down during the
Hmm.
daytime, so no access. I just think a lot of it plays into that. But I just feel like we have to really do our part of saying, like, we got to find areas that would say no, these are going to be our voting areas. Like, we can't the whole thing. And I think also, and now also a credit to vote by mail. I will credit a lot of it to
Hmm.
vote by mail.
That's good.
More people are voting by mail, so okay, you do see that. Okay, not as many people are going to the polls, so we can decrease those. So like you said, we can't go on negative wise. We got to look at the actual facts of why it's doing that. But it's just interesting to see that vote by mail has increased. So now they say, oh, well, more people are voting by at home. So now my thing is, do we need more drop boxes then? More accessible drop boxes, instead of just having one at the Abrams Library and one down at the Civic Center. Them the only two that we have within the proximity of North Omaha. So maybe that's a thing we need to. I'm not Abrams, Washington Branch Library.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to say, like, should there be another one
Hmm.
more centralized, instead of saying you either go to Ames or you go downtown to go drop one off?
But I think too on that, and I got to keep that question hopefully in my mind. I should have wrote it down. But Precious, when you say that, I can agree with you on maybe getting more boxes, but people need to be educated there. You don't have to put it in that box
Mm-mm.
when you're out, when you're going to a doctor's office or whenever, I think people need to understand as long as it's a designated box that says it is election
Be
box,
box.
you can put it that ballot. But I
Mhm.
also have to go back to Jackie. It is hard, and I'm not going to say I can take 100% out of that negativity because it does come. I mean, we live with it so much each and every day, and particularly with this new administration and everything, it's awfully hard not to have that in your mind going, saying, there's a little. And then also the fact that, and I've said it over and over, and I'll keep saying it, I don't know if it does any good. People, your vote is your power. And
Mhm.
if you didn't have that power, they wouldn't be doing so many things to take and put barriers in. Because now the barriers are just a little different than the old Jim Crow. They're just a new, but it's a barrier. And, even maybe having more boxes. But that would be if we keep them less. And now I've been hearing rumbles that, the new legislature and stuff is looking at maybe wanting to take and put those make early or voting by mail change the way we're doing that because it used to be Republicans did not vote so much as by mail, but now that's changing. So now they don't want to get where there might be more people coming into the poll. And then one other thing, and what's your opinion on this, Precious, is it's more your elderly people who vote, and they vote 100, anywhere from 90 to 100%. They want to go to that physical place.
Mhm.
But if you make that more difficult for them to get there because of their age or their condition disabled, what is your opinion? Do you think that's part of this too?
I do
And
think
and
that.
before
Oh,
you
go
and
ahead.
before you get too far into that, I do want to respect your time because I know you have a meeting at 1. So after you answer this, we'd love to get into your numbers that you have as
Yes.
well, just
Yeah,
so just so you know, so you can run
got
those through to us and we can kind of engage in that
you.
conversation
Got
too.
you. So I do think that it is a problem when it comes to our elderly being involved because they believe in the
Mhm.
power of seeing that ballot. There's some that want to vote from home, but there's some that actually feel like going. They fought so hard for us to get here,
Yes. Hmm.
so it's like we fought for this. I'm gonna go in. So I
Yes.
think that is an issue also because you're starting to see a lot of our like, for instance, I'll give Salem Manor, for instance, like what is the closest voting place for them? I think it would be either be Adams Park or the Malcolm X Foundation. I don't,
Because I think
or
the Urban League didn't have it. I'm not sure if they were.
I don't think I didn't see it. And normally
Uh-uh.
it's the Urban League
The
because
Urban League was a polling place for the presidential. I don't know if it was
But it
for
for the
the
wasn't for
primary.
the.
primary. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's a issue right there. I mean,
Yeah.
so now how do we get more churches involved? How do we
Hmm.
make 75 North a polling place like
Right.
right there? I mean, the venue area could be a polling place on. I think that would be something that we need to talk about. So I do see that as an issue. That is going to be a hindrance for them because again, they don't want to do the vote. They don't want to vote by mail.
Mm-mm.
I think who the towers. I remember the towers used to be a voting
Yes.
place. That was something that Preston worked very hard in making sure that
Hmm.
everybody knew to come down and vote. I mean, there would be like, so we got to make it more accessible
Hmm.
to our seniors and to our to the people who do vote because they do have a
They
higher
do.
number. And I was looking, trying to figure out if I can find those numbers where I can go more deep dive demographically on how many people are voting in District 2 based off the age and demographics. And that's something we have to wait for them to add the rest of the numbers in. But I would love to come back and really take a more deeper dive into actually seeing who is voting. The other day I was with my daughter, she's 21, and I literally said to her about voting, and she kind of hurt my feelings because I was like, well, I was like, well, we need to do this. She's like, no, y'all got to meet us where we at. She's like, everybody's not civically engaged like me because my
Hmm.
mom. So everybody, she said, so y'all gotta stop talking in your jargon and start talking like we do. And really, like, we don't want to hear your stories of what you've done. We want to hear your stories of what you're going to do because we were a part of it. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I gave her an idea and she was like, we might come to that. I don't know. So I'm like, wow. So it's like, she was dead serious about it too. So I was like, well, let me figure this out. But she's like, if it doesn't have a certain point appeal to it, we're not gonna come and vote. She's like, y'all gotta really start talking to us better and understanding that we're a part of this voting block now. So I've had to like call some people and put my head. I'm like, okay, now she done threw me in there with the elders for real now.
Well, and I'm like Jackine, I'd like for you to get your numbers in, but we definitely have to have another discussion on that because I have a real problem with that is they want to say, you know, you got to have it this, so then, or I'm setting this out, but they're not understanding. You're the one that really can't afford to set
Get
out
out.
because it
Yeah.
is your future, your everyday. But let's get into the numbers because I
Well,
love that too.
I'm gonna get them, but I'm gonna say this to you, Miss Sherrill. What was really, really shocking was after her friends, we were talking about the presidential, and they were like, we don't know why we gotta vote. Da, da, da. And I'm like, well, you got to. But let me tell you, when Trump got into office, I was the first one they was calling me when they was talking about that financial aid being shut down. Miss Precious, what we gonna do? Miss Precious, what's gonna happen? I said, now y'all see why I kept telling y'all need to go vote.
Hmm.
So here I am walking them through that process. So numbers wise, so
Okay.
I went through some of the numbers and I went back to 2001 because I feel like that was
Hmm.
more, still in the same, in the not too far, but far enough. Um, so in 2001 in District 2, we had only 5,600 people voted in the election.
Hmm.
Then in 2005, it dropped to 3,800.
Right.
Um, and then 2009 went up by about 100, 3,900. 2013, 4,300. 2017, 4,500. 2021, 6,647. 2025, we had 600, I'm sorry, 6,302 people voted in this primary that just
Hmm.
passed. So I can see us going the way we need to, But the fact that we have over 30 something thousand people registered to vote in this district and only 6,300 turned out to vote, we have a serious problem.
Right.
We have a serious problem. And it goes back to we have to start talking more about the importance of voting. And we got to understand that, when people run for office, we got to say, hey, we know we have this many people running, but we
Hmm.
still need you to turn out. We still
Hmm.
have things, and we have to talk about the issues that are really impacting our communities as a whole and not try to isolate it to one area. And that was a thing that I really was concerned with this last, like North Omaha, and I'll continue to say it's not just 24th Street. North Omaha,
Amen.
so
I
much
I
than
said
24th
that
Street.
too, and it was hard to get people to understand that is, do you not understand when you have it that way? I think that brings the voting down, really.
Hmm.
Because if I'm on the outskirt, let's say I'm over there northwest part of the district, well, that's those folks. All they're
Yeah.
concerned about is 24th Street. I don't go to 24th Street. I'm not down on 24th. I can even say, like, what am I going to do? 24th Street. But that's what you heard. And even when I would talk and be on the debates, I was saying, we're bigger than this 24th Street. And if we don't change that concept, we're not going to get those voters on the outside to come in and vote.
Right.
And that's where your numbers are going to go up. Because if you, and you'll probably find out when you're getting more into that age, is those people, a lot, I hate saying those people, but the people who vote, those are, and they vote in the national, those are voters that are further away from North 24th Street.
Once a
North
person
24th
becomes
Street has the lowest turnout, actually.
And once a person becomes we gotta say once you vote in the primary, the general, those become normal voters.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
they're the regular voters. One thing I can say that sometimes we gotta put like reality to what we're looking at. I mean, as a young girl, I can honestly say I saw Sorensen be built
Hmm. Yeah.
before I saw Sorensen be built. I saw the development and I seen the purpose of Sorensen being built because they want to remove that traffic from West Omaha coming down Dodge and shift it so that people could
Mhm.
get easier to the amenities, get downtown. I was able
And
to
get
see
the hell on our way when it's after work.
they could be on that Sorensen Parkway. That was something that was, and then I saw when it stopped at 72nd and you could only go left or right. And then
Hmm.
seeing it when it continued past Winnie Hop. So
Right.
I've been a part of seeing all of this as a little girl to now to where it's at. And I start to tell people, look at the development that's happening in our
Yes.
community. That's something that I look at. I'm like, what is really benefiting us in this community, the things that we want. Because again, people want to come back to North Omaha. They see the amenities. They talk so bad about North Omaha. They put us on the news. I mean, for a long time, I used to get so
Hmm.
upset listening to news. But now I say people, they want to be close to the amenities. They want to be
Hmm.
close to that baseball park. They want to be close. So I need y'all to get out and vote because if y'all don't vote, they're going to continue to pull in and
Yes.
start to move us out, and then they're gonna be like, wait a minute, now I have no representation at all.
And that's
And
where it's going.
yeah,
Hmm.
and I want you to talk about some more numbers because I thought it was a big part of the conversation that we saw online, at least, is that people were concerned about the amount of candidates that we were having.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
feel like when you were looking at some of the previous election years for primary in general, you saw a certain pattern that I think people weren't necessarily recognizing. So I was hoping you could kind of speak to that piece as
Yeah,
well.
so if I go like for instance, like going into this one, we had 9 candidates run, and
Hmm.
so the number, I mean, for 9 candidates total, I mean, was what six? Let me see, 6,302. But if you go back to like 17 in District 2, I mean, in District 2, you had one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. You had 7 people run
Right.
in 17, and that number about 4,499,
Hmm.
499. But when you start to go 2013, only one, two, three, four, five. 5 candidates
We
ran.
had, I was going to say,
Yep.
2005, there were five candidates.
Yep,
So,
2005. But then we go all the way back. Well, no, 2005, we had in
I
the
thought it was,
primary, there was only one. He was uncontested. Frank Brown ran in 2005, and then you were as a write-in.
oh,
Mm.
And
okay.
then, yeah.
It was 2000. It was the next one, 2009, that there was five. Right.
Yes,
Okay.
2009. Yeah.
Yep.
So when I
Got it.
look at that, you see the number of candidates that are running, and then you see the numbers kind of fluctuate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also, I mean, we gotta figure out like we gotta figure this piece out. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you have more people running, is it less people showing up? Is it more people showing up? But then also the candidate wise, we gotta figure out like, you know, we know that when we look at the numbers, and there's some small numbers in there. Shout out to Brother Tyrone. He ran.
Mm-hmm.
He had a low number turnout. Anthony. 197 votes. We just got to realize, like, how do we come together and say, you know what, we want to run, but how do we work together and say, hey, who? And I say this to anybody as a Democrat. I know people be like, oh my God, she's saying this, but who is the best person to run?
Sure.
Because right now we splitting this, and now when you split this part, people are like, okay, especially in District 2,
And
we gotta.
I think that's an interesting point though, and that's something I do want to discuss further. I think that's a big conversation
Mm-hmm.
because in this election at least, and I know you mentioned 2025 this year 9. I think the last election with 2021 was 7 maybe, and I think
Mhm, mhm,
and I
Yes.
think the one before that was kind of 7 as well.
mhm,
And we saw increases in
Mm-hmm.
turnout, even though like not huge increases, but
yeah.
increases.
Yeah.
But with this election specifically, and y'all can give your opinion on this too. I didn't think there was much ideological overlap in the ideas that the candidates were bringing, and so I felt like that kind of unification conversation, while I think it is important to have, I think that's kind of where that barrier was, is that we weren't seeing a ton of overlap in people's opinions about how to solve problems. And then even in the amount of different temperaments we had, I don't think a lot of people had the same approaches. And I feel like that's the part that made it hard for us to have that unifying conversation, because people were coming from wildly different places. And I think when you see that even if they represented smaller constituencies, that there are constituencies and people that are believing in those ideas that the candidates were bringing, which I think made it hard for the candidates themselves to say, how can I give my votes to someone else if they're not necessarily representing the ideas that I had? So I wondered y'all's opinion on that.
I'll let Precious go because I know we're on time, but I definitely have an opinion on that.
I think that this is a time where we have to come together with those candidates. We'll have to come together and talk and say, how do we work together? Because, like you said, everybody has a different ideology of what they want, what they're
Mm-hmm.
looking at. They didn't overlap in some. So it's like, how does my plan benefit, your plan? You know what I mean? Like, how do we work together? Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be working together. There's no reason why we shouldn't be taking some of those ideas and saying, hey, if you're in there and you're sitting in that seat, let's talk about, when we talked about affordable
Mm-hmm.
housing, you talked about affordable housing. How do we put these two programs together to make it work? And so that's where I'm at with it. I think that people need to really let the egos go and sit down and talk about, because at the end of the day, it's not about you as a person, it's about the people that you serve and who want to see better in their district.
And there's where part of my problem is that it is only District 2 that you will hear over and over and over that you must unite. You must come together. Why do we have to be that? Is because when you look at District 4, they're not talking to them about, oh, okay, there was four people. They're not telling them, oh, you guys need to unite and come together. No, it's always District 2. And when people would say, oh, and they did the news media, is 9 people running. Because what does that say? To me, we should have not been concentrating on the number, but the character, the integrity, the what is it those individuals brought to the table that made them one. Now, we can sit here and say, and we've said it out in other surroundings and so forth. Well, we've got to come together and let's start. Hey, let's be frank. Let's face some reality. And now I know I'm about to keep you neutral, Precious. Jakeem, I don't have to worry about it. Hey, he gonna say what he wants. It don't make no difference. So that's the reason why I'm gonna say it. It's two. I am tired of saying, we come together. Now, I'm going to be upfront. If I had thought so much of those candidates, I wouldn't have needed to run. If they were along the same ideals that I was thinking of, I wouldn't need to run. How am I going to justify with myself to tell those constituents or those people who were supporting me, say, well, come on now, we need to go and get behind it, when I know those candidates who ends up being, they're not in that same mind and they're not going to change because I can say it. Reality, we have candidates, as you just said, they're not about the community. We've got two candidates with egos, and that's what it's all about. And you're fooling yourself if you think that you can go to them and sit down and say, hey, this is what it is. That's not going to happen. So, how do we, I guess, in the future, what is it we need to start doing now, Precious, in order to make a change so that if it does come down to that, is okay, we've got these two, we can go in and sit down and talk with them.
Yeah.
And can I
I
add a
mean,
little bit of a layer to that before you get
mhm.
off too? I wonder if you've seen in any other, state parties or
Hmm.
any other areas where they're having those kind of like come to Jesus conversations in a way that like creates that collaborative muscle. Like
Hmm.
have you seen any leaders or any people be able to
Yeah.
like really negotiate that in a way that feels good for the community?
I mean, I don't think I've seen a negotiation of it, but what I have seen is that we have had to have those sit down moments. And one thing that I believe in, and I've always said this, and some people might say I can't believe she's saying this, but I stand by this. My chair, but somebody just told me my office depressed them when they came in here just a little while ago. I just want y'all to know that, and I just had to look at the woman like she was crazy. Baby, she motivates me every day, that woman behind me. So don't ever tell me my office would make you depressed. But anyways, um, I always believe in that we need to go to back to the part of when we have a state central committee and county committees, we need to go back to the point of endorsements
Hmm.
and endorsing candidates because then that tells you this is where the party stands, this is who you stand with, and then you won't have these issues right here where you have to make a decision and do all these different things. Well, we got to join forces. No, we got to go back to the point of saying this is who we're endorsing, this is who we're supporting, we're behind them 100%, and there it
And
is.
that's it. Yeah.
That's it. That's what we got to
Hmm.
do. That's how I look at it. So I tell people, rip the damn band-aid off. Some people
Yeah,
gonna be mad.
I think that's a bold approach, and I that's my favorite kind.
California does it.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Other states do it. So I feel like we just got to get to that. I mean, it's gonna be hurt feelings, but it's not hurt feelings. It's not saying we don't support you. It's just saying we feel that this is the strongest person in this
for
Hmm.
situation
this time,
for
yes,
this time.
exactly,
That's
I mean,
exactly.
and I was somewhere. Where was I at the other day? And they made a comment. They said, Republicans are really good at saying, tap you on the shoulder. It's not your time. And they say, okay, but they got something else for you to do.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yes,
Why is it
yes.
so hard for us to say that without
Like,
being like, oh, you don't support me? It's not bad.
Well,
It just,
I'm gonna say this when you get off the phone because I feel like it's a lot about philanthropy that doesn't allow for those kind of conversations. Anyway, I'll say more when I don't want you to
yeah.
get you.
we're trying to be kind of respectful, but
I appreciate y'all.
um, he me, we don't hold back. We just like,
I
hey,
know
this
y'all
is it.
don't. I know
Do
y'all
you?
don't.
Is
Catch
there
me in the
anything?
summer.
Yeah, is there anything else you feel like is really important to share with like I mean, you did your own kind of live to talk
Hmm.
about the results of the election and how
Uh-huh.
we're going to move forward. But is there anything else before you get off that you think is important for this conversation, especially when you think about the two candidates that we have left for city
Hmm.
council
Mhm.
in this general election?
Yeah. I just think we need to make sure that we are having intentional conversations about what we want. I mean, we have John Ewing running for mayor. I mean, that we have,
Yes.
and I think we need to make sure that we're supporting that 100% because that election is 27 years to the
Hmm.
day that Brenda Council ran for mayor and lost by 735 votes. That's the first campaign I ever volunteered on. And
Hmm.
so to be in this space now, 27 years later, being able to see what's about to happen, I'm excited. We just need to have all hands on deck. We have an opportunity to make a big change in our community, and I think we have great candidates who we can sit down and say, "Hey, this is what it is." But I think also people need to remember that when you don't do the work that you're supposed to be doing, that you have been voted to do, people will show out or show up and make sure that you're no longer in that seat going forward. And I think people need to take that very serious as candidates. We have that power. And if we did not have that power, we would not see what we're seeing right now. That's just
Feel
my final
Amen.
take.
man, agreed, 100%. We know how to. We don't always put everybody in, but we know how to kick somebody out.
Trust me, we know how to remove folks real quick, don't we?
Yeah.
I
And
appreciate y'all. I got
yeah.
my next meeting. I appreciate y'all. I will come on here anytime to break this stuff down. But I mean, we got a lot of work to do, and I look forward to doing this work in the community.
Hmm.
Because I mean, no matter where my job is, I'm still a member of this community. This is a community
Hmm.
that made me who I am, and so I want to continue that work no matter how we get there.
Yes. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much because I know how you are busy and everything. And we definitely, hopefully, we'll be able to do something within the next week to 10 days, is because we've got to be pushing, as you just said. We've got a chance to
Yes,
change mayoralship. We can't just say, okay, we'll kick it down. No, we need to be doing something now, every single day, every single week,
yes.
because May 13th is just 4 weeks away. So we
And we're
need to really get in there. So,
We will be out on Saturday at the Pantry for Black Men United. We will be out there registering people to vote, making sure that those
mhm.
people, because those are individuals who still are struggling. They still need assistance. So we still want to make sure they know that we got them, even though we know that they're going through hard times. But how do we get them to make sure that they have a voice? Because then we can change some of the outcomes that they have right now. But we want to make sure that we're talking to all voters for everybody across the board. Not just We don't just want to target. We're talking to every voter
Yeah.
and making sure that we get everybody out to vote on May 13th.
And that you hit the point, is we've got to go to them and explain, if you do get out and get registered and vote, this could change what
To change.
your situation is right now. And when you do that, that's when we get more, I think, people who will vote. So thank
Yep,
you
that's what we need to
again.
do.
Thank
Thank
you for
You're
y'all.
everyone. All
Bye.
right.
Bye bye.
All right, we're gonna be able to break this on down now. And I wanted folks, as I had talked to Joaquin, is I thought he wrote a very profound post on Facebook. And I called him immediately and said, hey, can we get together where we can break this down? And Joaquin said, I'll talk to anybody, anytime, anywhere about anything. So I said, great, we're going to have it. And hopefully, if I called myself trying to get this set up beforehand, but I wanted to bring on the post if I can. Oh, find it again. Hopefully, I don't know why it won't work. Let me see here. I'm going to pause just for
Right
a
on.
second, and then I'll go to the shared where the folder I have you at. Just one second here. Okay. Pause.